hoping for a better result than Wednesday's night big slate. Couldn't get the right pieces in the right spot, and mostly it was just I looked back at my lineups, and really it was just one simple thing: Embiid, and that game got out of hand because I think I probably would have cashed in just about everything if Embiid puts up even just 50, not the 33, the season low or whatever it was for him in 16 minutes. Anyway, with that said, we have a little 4-gamer. I always want to remind everybody what you're looking for is a couple plays that get different in tournaments, and you're looking to try and narrow your price, your player pool as thin as you can, unless you're like max entering things. But I think you want to try to have a tighter price pool, player pool. Early on, the projections aren't going to have anybody who looks like a must play, so it's going to be interesting to go through and just see the guys we want to play today, because I can make a good case against all of them, and when it's a small slate, I think it's the time to try to take some weird chances here. We also go ahead.
I was going to say, also, despite the lack of success, really, I did have fun with the live sweat last night. We had one of our subscribers who was like who cast pretty deep in the fadeaway. We weren't rooting for him to get there. We were rooting for him to hold on. And that's kind of like a different type of sweat. So when you root for someone to hold on to get there, you got to root for like one guy. When you root for someone to hold on, you got to root against like 80 guys. At
least 80 guys.
So that's a little different. And we were following the 888, the 777. We watched JSU Rab take it down, and then we saw this guy with one lineup win the fadeaway. Just nearly impossible. So good for him, but that was kind of a fun sweat. And then literally just as I was logging off, someone noticed, "Hey Eric, how you doing in hockey?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't even know." And next thing you know, I was like in 11th. I'm like, "Oh God." I was just too tired. And next thing you knew, I ended up getting second in that thing. So there's always something to sweat. There's always something to do. But the other thing about tonight's slate, which is interesting, is not only there's not too much value, but there's nobody over 10K. I don't think. Let me just see.
Yeah, there is nobody.
There's nobody over 10K on the whole slate. So there's no one to really pay up for anyway. So it's Paul George being out. It looks like look, without even putting anything up, look right at the top of the board. Play those top dudes. You know what I mean? Like, but even just to pay 99 and 96, you are still going to need some value to make that work. So
we're going to need some value to appear because we don't have the value that you desperately want. So it's going to we'll go through it and see what we can do to maybe make something happen.
Yeah, my top. So when I usually run my sheets, even this early, you'll usually get, like, if there's really good value, you'll get one guy over 7x, a couple of guys over 6x, whatever. If it's kind of like mediocre value, you'll get like maybe one guy over 6x, the rest whatever. I have nobody projecting over 6x on the whole board right now, which is it's actually very rare. And I have nobody under like 4K that's even like projecting for any points really. And only one guy even under 5K that's projecting to be over even like 4.5, maybe 5x. So it is definitely a slate bereft of value. But as usual, I'm sure the whole country is going to get ruled out as soon as we log off. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and as I'll keep doing it with what it means to each team and all that stuff, and like as we go along, because like we have a first game here with the Knicks, where obviously the Knicks are in serious playoff contention, and they're probably going to get the 5 seed, but there's still a danger of them dropping back to the 6 or even the 7. So they're only 2 games up on the 7. They're going to try to win every game. That's the first thing. Orlando has been extremely feisty and sort of almost made a little bit of a playoff run themselves towards being relevant. They're kind of out of that now, but this Orlando team is going to be really, really good in the future. So I think this should be a reasonably competitive game. Orlando's like I said, they've been feisty. I think that right off the bat on this one, Mitch Robb. Let me make sure. Is your screen pulled up here? Sorry, I'm judging.
Should be.
Yeah, Mitch Robb, and Mitch Robb is probably one of the guys that you look at for value. Yeah. So I have a Mitch Robb or Hartenstein. I think both of them are viable today. I don't think either of them are going to be particularly high owned. Mitch Robb is not getting the type of projection that we're used, that like you'd think that 4,600 on this slate, but he really hasn't been all that great lately. I still think 4,600 is completely reasonable, especially against a team that likes to play big, but their centers end up leaking a lot of offensive rebounds. So I think it's a good matchup for Mitrov. They also get their shots blocked and the ball stolen more than, I think, a little bit above average. So Mitrov is definitely a guy who I'm looking at for some value. I like the underpriced feeling Brunson and Randall. They both feel cheap, even on the back-to-back. And they're both in play for me. But the main thing is, if we're looking for value, I do think Mitrov or Hartenstein are two guys we're going to be looking at and talking about later today. Interesting to note, by the way, Mitrov today he's got a point projection of 6.5 points lower than Nick Richards. Because Nick Richards had 2 foul trouble games that they lost by 40, Nick Richards is right now currently I have as the best value on the slate. And it's just interesting to note that Nick Richards is now projected for 30. In the last game, Mitrov was projected 8 points higher than him. And this game, Mitrov's projected 6 points lower. Just kind of interesting when that happens, when really all that changed was perception and blowouts. So I do think Mitrov is right off the bat the guy who I'm probably gonna put in early on, or Hartenstein. And then again, I do like Brunson and Randall, but I don't know where I'm going to end up ranking them with the guys in the later game, because those guys are really good as well. On the Orlando side, Cole Anthony is going to be the one I think people flock to without Isaac's gone again, and so is Suggs. So I think Cole Anthony is completely in play. I feel a little nervous about a 40% owned Cole Anthony because he's very scoring reliant and he comes off the bench, and there are many paths where he's not closing games. So this just that's my disclaimer for my worry of Cole Anthony. And then on the other side of this game, I think that if you talk about the last game as being somewhat stackable with the spend ups, this game in more of a mid-tier spend up way on the Orlando side. I think every one of these guys is in play. My favorite being Paolo, but I have no problem with Wagner or Fultz. But right now it's Paolo and Paolo, then Anthony, then Carter for me, and then Mitrov and either Brunson or Randall as my favorites. But I think this is a game you're going to have some exposure to. Yeah,
the question I was going to ask you is one you handled halfway through when you started talking about Mitch Robb. I think a very legitimate question is, who do you like more, Mitch Robb or Nick Richards? And you kind of handled that. I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I think that listen, first of all, center is always a play that has center, a position that has plays.
Right. There's lots of
it's not just about those two. When I rate these guys, I have like 4 of the top 5 plays are centers. I have Richards, Allen, Mitch Robb, and Wendell Carter. So it's hard to say that one of them is that much better than the other. So with that said, I will throw in Wendell Carter to the mix with guys from this game. So Wendell Carter, you play Banchero like you mentioned, and then on the Knicks side, I think Mitch Robb certainly rates to be the best value. I'm not exactly getting to this to Cole Anthony as much. So the fact that he's high owned, that's kind of nice. And the fact that you already were a little suspicious of a 40% on Cole Anthony, I kind of like that as being a reason to not get too much of that. So Banchero, Carter, Mitch Robb, all bigs though. We're gonna have to find a guard somewhere, but for now, that's what I like from this game at least.
Yeah, I think you're going to see center in the utility in all my lineups today at first look, because they're even all the pivot plays I want to make are all centers. So I'm totally there. And getting into it in the next game, Jared Allen is probably the best center option on the slate, to be honest. He's going to have ownership. I like him a lot. I think Mobley's price is extremely reasonable. I like all these guys in this matchup. I think Garland is the one I would side with. I think the Garland Brunson price thing, like playing those two guys, is kind of something I'm fiddling with if I'm not going to play Shea or Kawhi. But Jared Allen headlines it for me on the Cleveland side. Unfortunately, they're just getting more centers involved. But I do have Jared Allen as a priority. And then if you don't want to play him because you get the forward eligibility, I would go to Mobley. But I would play one of those guys in as of right now. I would play them in all my lineups, but I don't think you have to. Or I don't know about all of them, but certainly most of my lineups. And then I have it rated Garland, then Mitchell. But I think they're both. DraftKings did the thing again where they started pricing down the studs, and it just makes it everybody look interesting. Not off the board, but low owned play that you could look at here is Karis LeVert. This is going back to Brooklyn, and I think that he's had more run without Kevin Love in Cleveland anymore. He's getting the minutes there. So I mean, you look at the game log, it's kind of hard not to like Levert. And I know some of those games, Mitchell was out for one, Garland was out for one, but every game over 30 fantasy points, playing, up towards 30 minutes, going back to Brooklyn, sign me up, man. So Levert, actually, I'll take away the large field part of it. I think Levert is, at first look, my first sub 10% guy. He and Mitch Rob are my two favorite sub 10% guys on this slate. And on the Brooklyn side, I don't like this matchup for them, but I think that, Dorian Finney-Smith is 3,900 on a small slate. That's maybe when I can feel more comfortable about playing a guy like DFS. And then Dinwiddie, Cam Johnson should be popular. I probably will avoid that because they still have some crossover with Royce O'Neal and Finney-Smith. Like, there's just other guys they could play. So I'll talk myself out of him at high ownership. And Mikal Bridges is probably a little too cheap. So I have it ranked Dinwiddie, followed by Finney-Smith, followed by Bridges, all for very different reasons on the Brooklyn side. What do you have in this game, Sheets?
I think Mitchell's the best play. I mean, I just do. I mean, he's 8,400, and he's just on a slate without a lot of ceiling. You know what I mean? Like there are guys, but there's not like normally there's like 15 guys that can outscore Mitchell. And Mitchell puts up one of his games. He could blow the slate open. You know what I mean? So I actually listen, I think Garland's I think Garland's probably a better point per dollar play. But if you're just looking for ceiling, I mean, getting close to playoff Mitchell time. You know what I mean? It's getting close.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the idea of Levert going back to Brooklyn, as I do Jared Allen going back to Brooklyn.
And they just had this game, and they both were good. So
yeah, so I do like that. It's kind of hard to play Brooklyn guys. It's hard to play anybody against Cleveland. They just pack it freaking in. They just play really, really good defense, and it's just kind of where fantasy points usually go to die. But I mean, it's a 4-game slate. So I just every time I play Dinwiddie, I just regret it. That's the best I can describe it. He has like 12 fantasy points at the half, and then I'm begging for him to get 5x by the end of the day. It's like, I don't know.
He does though.
He does. He gets there. But I think Mitchell's probably the best play from this game. And if you're not going to play Shea or Kawhi, like for example, I think that's probably what I would do.
Yeah, I just want to re-echo though, just the Mitchell and Garland. I think that one of those guys, even if you're playing the later guys, I do think trying to play one of them is a good idea. Basically, one of them gets there every time. And I actually personally have Garland a little bit higher tonight. I tend to like Mitchell for the sort of the desperation. And look, it is on the road in Brooklyn. It's only a 4-point game that they're favored by. So it could be one of those games for Mitchell. But I tend to try to find like a real extra reason. The truth is you don't really need one on this kind of a slate. So maybe you're right. I do think one of those two is definitely the way to go. And when we look for value and we talk about different things, the minutes are down a little bit. We used to feel at least secure with Okoro's minutes. We don't even feel secure about that anymore. But that's another too thin value play that you could consider. So like DFS and Okoro, who are going to be low owned and super cheap, if you wanted to squeeze guys in, those would be guys you could look at. Not the most fun plays, obviously, in the world. Why don't you start off with Charlotte and New Orleans here?
Yeah. So looky who's put up 3 straight smash fantasy point games, Mr. Valanciunas. Just wanted to point that out.
And the best matchup in basketball for centers.
Yeah, I mean, looks good to me. I mean, listen, you always have the risk of him getting those 19-minute games, but I don't know, man. This is 3 in a row where you're happy to have him, which is more than you could say about a lot of players if you want to know the truth. Mm-hmm. So I like that. Ingram is a guy that you play and do well with. Ingram's a guy when I play, he scores 15. So I'm probably going to avoid him. But hey, Rozier's always Rozier and McCollum. You could always try that. And again, there's just not a lot of value in the slate so far. So these mid-range type prices are pretty appealing. And like I said, you throw Valanciunas into the mix of really good center plays, I think. Valanciunas, McCollum, Ingram, and Rozier, and I don't usually. Now we talked about Richards already, so I figured that will have gone without saying. And Gordon Hayward at 5,700 looks reasonable too. So again, mid-range together, maybe that's the way to play if no value opens up, rather than spending up for like the Shays and the Kawhis. But I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Nick Richards is going to look like a really good play. And I just want to point out, I said this on our last show, and I made a really long point of it. Nick Richards had the 2 down games in the blowouts and whatever. And I was just saying, okay, so they went from projecting him at 30 to projecting him at 20 fantasy points based on 2 weird games. And I said, that's just a mistake. Of course, Nick Richards at 0.2% ownership put up 42 fantasy points. I didn't end up getting to him because there was just so many other players. I thought he was mispriced. Actually, I did play him in one of my 88s, which cashed. But Nick Richards there's no lock to this play. Like, first of all, there's foul trouble, there's blowout risk, there's they have the Thor will get some minutes. So I do think like Richards is currently, obviously, if I was building a lineup right now, I think he'd be in it. But I don't think you have to. I think there's just other ways you can go. And then like you said, the pricing of these guys is kind of intriguing on Hayward and Dennis Smith Jr., especially for me. Especially when you factor in the game could get like ugly, and then maybe you need Dennis Smith Jr. helps like the charge back. I'm just sort of trying to think of game scripts that work. Charlotte is down body, so I think you want to do some stuff here. But I don't love the price on Rozier. It's okay. PJ Washington has been sort of hit or miss, hasn't been as consistent this year. No one's going to play Kelly Oubre, which is just kind of interesting. So Richards and Hayward, while they look like and Dennis Smith Jr., while they look like the best value plays, I'm totally open to the other guys. But right now, those are the 3 that I have the most interest in. And on the New Orleans side, the Larry Nance projection, I'm just going to point out where, like, I will, again, because we're looking for value and stuff, he's on my list right now. But there is a trend that you sort of kind of pointed out, not exactly the same thing, but Joe Val, I mean, he got the minutes against Houston. He played 34 and 33 in those games. He only played 27 against San Antonio, but he just went nuts. We know he's a point per minute monster. You can't have a better matchup in basketball than this one. So I am completely on board with taking some shots at Joe Val. Unfortunately, I think that he's going to have just a little bit of ownership tonight. Ingram and McCollum, I'm never going to argue for a play against Charlotte, even Josh Richardson as well. But none of them, like, I feel a little better about spending up a little bit more, or playing Mitchell, or going down to Garland or Brunson. I just feel like I like those guys a little bit better than I like the New Orleans guys tonight, even though the matchup's great. And we shouldn't expect New Orleans to blow out anybody. And for what it's worth, this is a very important game to New Orleans. So, and as the games have become very important, we've seen Joe Val on the court a little bit more. So maybe that's something we should be aware of. And that's kind of interesting because that was the opposite of what they were doing earlier in the season. So I like Joe Val as my favorite play from New Orleans. And I am okay with taking a shot on Nance because one of these days he's going to put up a monster game, and I would like to be a part of it. All right. So speaking of other things you can do to get a little bit weird on this slate, Jalen with the Y Williams at 3,500 is certainly no model of consistency, both for minutes. I mean, he plays for OKC, so you kind of know what you're getting into. But you want to talk about value, and I know he takes up a center spot, which is my biggest reason for not wanting to play him. You have a starting center at 3,500 that has put up 30 plus games. Has basically half of his games are in the mid 20s. For a guy who's 3,500, that's pretty good. That's better. Why is he projected so much less, for example, than Larry Nance Jr.? I don't understand it. So that's just, again, Larry Nance Jr. has forward eligibility, but Jalen Williams when I first looked at the slate, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I can always do on these little 4 gamers. I can use Jalen Williams and just hope it's one of the good games for him. Are they playing a team that's going to play a big man without Paul George? They will be playing a combination of Zubac and Plumlee, I think, pretty much all of the center minutes. So that means for me that I am going to play Jalen Williams more than the field. Jalen with a Y, the one no one's playing, 3,500. And I think that he's going to be completely unowned, and that is a play that can end up helping you win a tournament. I'm going to take that shot. That's my plan for tonight. The other guys, like the weird part is that people are going to play some Lindy Waters. Like he's currently shows up as a better point per dollar play than Jalen Williams, and he's actually got like some like the early ownership projections have him getting some ownership. I would rather just play Jalen. I don't know why. Like Lindy Waters wasn't getting there a lot of the games without Shea and without Giddey. He did get there a couple times, but it feels like weird that when I see those things, I feel like, oh, there's something wrong here. Isaiah Joe is another one that people are going to look at. I just think mostly with Shea and Giddey, I would usually just say forget Isaiah Joe. But it's a smaller slate, and the minutes have been in the mid-20s plus every game. And he's a high usage. He can be a high usage guy. He's just not high usage with Giddey and Shea. So I'm just trying to figure that whole thing out. But the main plays in the game, who most people are going to play, I think would be Dort, Shea. But the truth is, I'm looking at early projections. Shea's projection isn't great. I kind of like. I think I might just try to force in Shea as a priority and Kawhi, and then sort of see what else I can get around it, because I think that we've talked about some speculative value, but OKC has been really feisty. Currently, right now, they were the 8th seed, which they could be the 12th by the end of the night. It's a very bunched up group. They've got a chance to get into the 6th seed still. The Thunder have been really, really scrappy. They've won 8 out of their last 10. I like the Shea play a little bit. And if you're not going to play Shea, I think Giddey is completely reasonable. But I kind of like Shea back in LA. For those of you who don't know, he played in LA. He was drafted by the Lake Clippers. And then on the other side, it's going to be, okay, which guys do we trust getting the minutes? And we think it's going to be Terrence Mann. It seems the most likely that he would get the boost. But it's so up in the air because we've seen him play like 5 or 10 minutes in some games. So I'm not going to play him as chalk. Marcus Morris, not an all overly exciting play, but it is a small slate. I'm not really in love with the other side outside of maybe just playing Kawhi or Westbrook. And that's pretty much what I probably will do. I do think Zubac is an interesting large field tournament play, but I don't think I would play him in my single entry stuff. And Nick Batum is another one of those fringy value plays that you could look into.
Yeah, you would think that with Paul George out, it would be more than just say play Kawhi, right? You'd think that other guys would get boosts, but the other guys are just very, very fringy, with the exception of Westbrook. And we talked about this the other day, and you seem to have not obviously try to convince me, but you mentioned that those types of things don't really affect Westbrook as much as maybe other guys, because he would have, he would have been having the ball looking for other people anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like whatever, but for whatever reason, again, this is there's no reason, right? I mean, Paul George out, Kawhi's going to project to be the top projected scorer on the slate. I mean, I think he's probably going to be a little bit higher on than this. And I think people are going to play Shea and Kawhi. I think I would start with maybe Westbrook just for fun. You know what I mean? And I don't play him too much, whatever. But maybe I just have to feel that with George out, it has to go somewhere. And aside from Kawhi, Westbrook's probably the best offensive player. You know what I mean? Even though he's got the reputation for not being that way anymore, I just think that's a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, the reputation is a lot of nonsense. I mean, I think it's a lot of nonsense. If people don't think he's their second best offensive player, I don't know what to tell you.
And it's going to be a fast-paced game, and he's very good in fast-paced games. And I don't know, 4-game slate. I would, I think that the Kawhi Shea pairing is gonna be. I think stuff's gonna open up to make that happen. And I don't think that Shea's going to be only 15%. I think he's going to end up getting more. But the Jalen Williams play, I mean, I will tell you this. I mean,
he's awesome.
It's going to be 2%. I mean, it's
Jalen with a Y. Yeah. No one's going to play.
We already talked about 100 centers. You know what I mean?
Right.
So no one's playing it. What about the other Jalen Williams?
The other Jalen Williams is going to be a reasonable play. He's actually, I think he'll be the highest owned.
Oh, I don't want that with shit.
He's really good. You can play him and feel pretty confident that you're just going to get about 4.5 to 5x basically.
Yeah. So I don't know what I really don't know what I'm going to do. Listen, if there's no other value, I know what's going to end up happening. I'll probably just start with something like what's in my lineups here. You know what I mean? Just the regular dudes. I'll have to pick probably one guy under 5K, probably Mitch Robb. You know what I mean? That's yeah. And then the rest will be mid-range stuff, Mitch Robb. Who else is under 5? Well, Dennis Smith Jr. is around 5K. Nick Richards around 5K. boy, here's a clipper for you. I can't do this. Eric Gordon, 25% ownership. I don't know. So I one thing I do agree with you about is that double center is going to make a lot of sense tonight.
That's for sure. So I'll go through my preferred plays, and you'll see the issue that I'm going to have because I love the centers. I have Mitch Rob or Hartenstein. I like trying to get to one of Brunson or Randall. I like Jared Allen. If not, I think Mobley's reasonable. I like Garland or Mitchell. I really like LeVert. The more I think about it as a tournament play, so I might even be able to skip Garland Mitchell if I want to play LeVert. Richards, Joe Val, Jalen Williams with the Y to get different. Shea and Kawhi. And you can see that half of those guys are centers. So it's going to be tricky to try and figure out how to do that. But I do think that trying to get like the Jalen with a Y Williams play is the kind of play like, because you're not only are you differentiating by using a value play. You're not differentiating just because you're getting a low-owned guy. You're also completely changing your build by using the center spot for a guy at 3,500, which is no one's going to do.
Okay.
So I think it's a really interesting tournament type of build, and maybe you play him with the more chalky the Nick Richards, and then you can spend up your money elsewhere. I think that's kind of an interesting route to go on this slate. And if there's one game I was going to pick, I always try to find one game if I was going to target to stack. You could stack and pray with Charlotte and New Orleans. I think that if I had to pick one, gun to my head to stack, it would be the first one, the Knicks and Magic. But I think that in terms of a salary allocation, I'm very happy just playing Shea and Kawhi and having those late night guys hopefully bringing me home down the stretch with Jalen Williams in there as well. All right, Cheats, anything else before we get out of here?
No, just a couple of announcements. Though you haven't seen it, I did do my MMA DFS breakdown. That's already up on the site. My MMA contrarian betting breakdown. That's already up on the site. Trying to get like some stuff done before I get out of here tomorrow. There's going to be keep an eye on the Discord because you might see some extra NASCAR stuff from Brandon if he's in the mood to post something on there. And I'm not going to be available live. And again, I'm going to do my best to get projections up over the weekend. And that's all I can promise is to do my best.
All right. Appreciate that, man. And we'll be around. And as I keep reminding everybody, I do think the SaberSim, the True DFS with the SaberSim package is the best route, but I'll do my best to update anybody if there's any questions. I'm doing it in the premium channels, and we're going to have a premium channel for every sport by the end of the day. So you're going to see a lot more activity there. So if you're members, make sure that you're in those channels. If you have any problems, you can message as Evan says, you can message at scans, you can DM them, or you can post it and then tag me or Evan. That's fine with me. So good luck to everybody, and I'll see you guys live at 6 Eastern. Sorry not to have sheets tonight, but we're going to try and make some money on this weird little 4-gamer.